Good afternoon. Thank you for being here at this panel about translation and scouting of books for children. And I'm thrilled to have these colleagues from all over Europe and working in different, really different languages. Julia, I would like to welcome Julia Potr-Stavl, who translates from Estonian, Finnish, and English into Slovenian. Slovenia is guest of honor of Bologna Children Book Fair this year. Then Eva Valbo, she translates from Danish and Norwegian into Italian. Ruth Ahmedsdai Kemp, she translates from from Arabic, Russian and German into English. Then Elisabetta Lippolis, she's a translator and she's vice president of IB Italia. I'm a translator of from French and English and Portuguese into Italian, and I'm president of Seattle European Council of Literary Translation Association. There is another speaker. She had another meeting, so she will be, hopefully she will be here very soon. Karolina Jazecka, she's Polish, she lives in Barcelona, and she works from Catalan and from Spanish into Polish. I would like to, say a few words about Seattle. Seattle is a 30 years old no-profit international organization that gathers 34 associations from 26 countries and represents 27 languages. We disseminate information about literary translation and share experiences and good practices, and we advocate for the rights and needs of literary translators. A literary translator being anyone translating literary texts such as fiction and non-fiction, children literature, but also academic writing, graphic novels, plays, screenplays, and anything else that require the skills and the expertise of a literary translator. Good literature gives the child a place in the world, said Astrid Lindgren, and kids have the right to have good literature and good books. And literature translators play a vital role in opening children's minds, ignite curiosity, and give amusement, discovering interesting books from other cultures and languages to develop critical thinking. This is an invaluable and sometimes invisible work. It takes a lot of time to find good books and resources, research, traveling, networking, and some of us are also agents and scouts, and we'll explain the difference between a literary agent and a scout. And we, as I said, we had a really wide array of languages and experiences. I'm really glad about it. So thank you for being here. Now more than ever, with conflicts and migrants and refugees leaving the country where they grew up, it is important to promote books in all languages and from all cultures. Multilingual also and bilingual editions. There is a very recent project, European project, the name is Tales of Ukraine, and it was a project of Creative Europe aimed at helping Ukrainian refugees by publishing and distributing bilingual editions of Ukrainian children books. And this this program will run until 2025. As the translators on the cover report pointed out, the European literature market is in fact not as multilingual as one would hope. The literature markets in Europe are dominated by domestic literature on one hand and translated Anglo-American books on the other. And this leaves little space for the book translated from other European languages. And to quote the Frankowski resolution about the future of the European sector report, many books published in the UA are not available to European readers as a result of the linguistic and geographical fragmentation of the EU market, and in particular the lack of translation from languages other than English. Books are invaluable as they are the foundation for learning and knowledge. And when children learn to read, they simply don't decipher words. Their minds are opened up to a world of limitless ideas. So this is a really important work that literary translators do, especially with children literature. And I would like to start with Julia. Thank you for being here. And please explain what is your work as a scout and as a translator from Estonian and from Finnish into Slovenian.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here because this diversity in children's literature is a subject that's very close to my heart, obviously, because I translate from two small-sized languages, Estonian and Finnish, into a language that is also small, which is Slovenian. Sometimes my friends joke, are you going to find another language that's even smaller? Like, what is your agenda, But I actually started with English. I studied English at the university, but I just realized at some point I wanted to learn languages anyway. But I also realized it's interesting to find something new, because English is lingua franca. Most people can read it. And so I think it's really interesting and exciting also to find something new, like I can read Estonian and Finnish, and bring in titles into Slovenia that might otherwise have been overlooked. But just as an introduction maybe, and since Slovenia this year is the guest of honor, just to give you a little overlook of what we're talking about. So in Slovenia, each year there are about 1,000 books for children and young adults published, give or take. And of those, there's about, let's say, 60% are translated and 40% are Slovenian books. So it's quite a big percentage of translated books. If we think about in some countries, the overall percentage of translation is as low as 3. Like I know in the US, this has been traditionally the percent where it was about for all books, not just children's. But of those 60% that are translated, 3 languages are dominant. Actually, 1 language is really dominant. Of course, we all know which one. It's English. And in 2022, that's the last year for which I have data for the whole year, it was 56% of all those translations were from English. 1 year previously, it was 60. So it does vary, but it's around between 50 and 60, let's say, of all those titles are from English. Followed by French, it was about 12%, and then German, 10%. So those 3 languages already make up 80% of the whole body of translated children's literature in Slovenia. And the first 8 languages, Italian is one of them. It was about 3% children's literature was translated from Italian. The first 8 languages make up more than 90%. So we see that diversity is really lacking. And it's really crucial, and this is, I see, like I said, a huge role of translator also as a scout, as someone who can bring in new ideas for books. But for a book to be published from a country like Estonia, in Slovenia, some things need to happen, right? So first of all, there has to be interest in general among the publishers for this country. Second of all, you need to find good books from this country, right? Not just Estonia, but any, if you're wanting to bring in books into the country and propose them to publishers. So you need to find a good book, a book you're really excited about. Thirdly, you need a translator, which is also not a given. Slovenia is a small country. There are a lot of translators from English, French, German, of course. But I can tell you that I'm the only one from Estonian. And from Finnish, I do most of the work, but there are 2 more who translate occasionally. So basically, we need more translators. It would be very good to get more translators. But this is the situation now. So before I started translating from Estonian, I don't think there were any translations of children's literature, or maybe some from English, but now I've translated almost 15 titles, and these are basically the first titles from Estonian now translated, just like an example. um, then you need, or it helps if there's also financial incentives, right? Because it's good, it's okay to talk about, yes, we need diversity, but what the publishers are also interested about is, bottom line, is this gonna work also financially? I mean, you can say, yes, this is a great book, I love it, you know, it should definitely be published, and I want to translate it, but the publisher, bottom line, is gonna say, okay, you know, is it viable? Can I, you know, is it gonna make me a profit, or at least not gonna put me into red numbers? So a lot of countries, and EU, now we know EU has a lot of incentives, different projects. There's some EU money, but also some countries give grants to, for example, for translators or for the publishers who publish their books. So both Estonia and Finland, the countries, the literature I translate, I know they give grants to support the translation of their literature, and it's also the same for I know for Slovenia. So Wink, if anyone is interested to translate, also. But that is of course a huge part as well. But maybe now I give you the word.
Let's see that, Eva. Ci passiamo. Allora, Eva, sì, dico, perché non ho detto quella di Giulia, ma allora, Eva is Danish, was born in Denmark and raised in Italy in a Danish-Italian family. She did classical studies and wrote her PhD thesis on Saxo Grammaticus History of Denmark, composed in Latin in the 12th century. Her love for translation has its seeds in her university years, but she started to work as a full-time literary translator in 2012. She's an active literary scout specialized in Danish and Norwegian literature for children and for YA. She's a board member of a Translators Union Strade that she represents in Seattle. And she's a tireless cultural promoter and organizer. She coordinates 2 peer-to-peer residential workshop programs, vice versa, for Danish-Italian literary translators, and Laboratorio Nordico for translators from Nordic languages into Italian. Since 2017, she coordinates translation events at 2 book festivals in Palermo, Una Marina di Libri, and Festival delle Letterature Migranti. Thank you, Eva, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Francesca. Thank you, everyone. I prepared a few slides, as you can see on my back. And I'll try to, while drawing on my own experience as a literary translator and scout, I will also try to think in general terms about the translator and the scouting translator as a professional. So, if the technicalities work, do they work? Yes, okay. Last year, in this very same place, we had another international panel organized by Seattle. It was called Translating Children's Literature, Juggling Between Boundaries. And I was here again with Francesca, talking about the Nordic example. What's the main, if there is a thing about Nordic children's literature? And I would say that the thing would be pushing boundaries. It's always been like that ever since Astrid Lindgren or the big classics. The Nordic children's writers like to dare to talk about difficult topics such as death or sickness or dysfunctional families, mental health problems, sex, difficult relationships. But they always do that from a child's point of view and without moralizing. That's like the very basic. And so when I started my career as a literary translator, I started by scouting, by trying to pitch books that I would like to translate myself. And so this has been my way of entering into the book market. And by then, there were very few Danish children's books in the Italian market, mainly because they were considered to be difficult, but probably also because there was no mediator. Because my colleagues that were working from Danish, which is my main language, into Italian, they were specialized in main fiction, literary fiction, or crime novels. So the role of a translator as a scout, as a mediator, can really be key in making things happen in a market. So the very basics, a translated book's journey. Of course, it starts with a writer, then you have the publisher in the original language, then you have a literary agent. We'll have one in a while that we talk about her own experience, her own side of the job. Then a translator that can also be a scout, especially if she, because it's mainly women we're talking about, especially if she works with, from, or to minor languages. I also, I feel with you. I translate from marginal languages, Danish and Norwegian, and Italian may not seem so small as a language, but it's not that big in the international book market. So, so I consider myself as a translator between minor languages. A translator and scout can do reader's report, sample translations, own proposals. All of them are, for the most part, very poorly paid. And if you stay with me, we'll get back to this. Then you have a foreign publisher, which is also very important. It's not a translated book needs a home, a place to be. So it's not just the goal of a scout should not be just get the book published, but make it feel at home. Find the right catalog, and this really needs a very good knowledge of both book markets, the original book market and the target book market, and then of course a book would land in the reader's hands. I'd like to quote a very important resource that has been published a couple of years ago by the European Commission, a report that is available in several languages. It's called Translators on the Cover. You will find it on the European Commission's website. And it talks about everything a translator needs to know and lobby for as well. As Francesca already said, that there is a problem in the translation market in Europe. There is not enough diversity, so there's still something that we can do there. I like this quote because it talks about bringing together several parts of the chain: writers, translators, publishers. They need a strong political and financial support from public authorities if we want to safeguard the multilingual and multicultural heritage in Europe. And we need this because what happens? I don't. Okay, we need this because, as you will see, a highly qualified work cannot be done for free or for very poor income. So we really need that kind of help from public authorities. I call it an endangered profession, translator's profession, because it has low income but requires very high skills. And this is kind of paradoxical. Usually, translators are paid with a fee that, according to page. Sometimes, only sometimes, we get royalties in spite of recent law regulation, new regulations. They can get something extra from grants and from PLR, public lending rights money, but not everywhere. For example, not in Italy. We have no social security, which is a main problem, and lack of visibility. And I will get back to this also later, because visibility is not meant to be. It's not a goal in itself, and visibility means respect. It means that a translator is there, needs to be visible because he or she needs better working conditions. All right. So, what do translators need apart from better working conditions? I'll give you a few examples. Mobility grants. Travel grants to attend book fairs, residencies, and networking opportunities. All of these are key for good translation work, but also for good scouting. If you need to scout to pitch good books, you need to see the books, to be in the places where the books are made. This picture is from the latest Copenhagen Book Fair back in November, where I was there with a bunch of translators from Danish from all over the world. 60 people using Danish as lingua franca from all continents. It's quite weird, but a nice experience. And this was a table where each of us brought their own translations of Danish books into 60-something languages. But, I mean, traveling also for work costs money. And if you have, live on a low income to start with, you cannot afford to go to places. So mobility grants are really important for us. Accessible training. Funded lifelong training opportunities. It also goes with networking. It's always good to meet with colleagues and exchange views. You really become a better translator. You never arrive as a translator. You're always on a journey, and I think that colleagues are really important in this journey. This picture was made in September. In Tuscany, in a very beautiful countryside villa, where for a few years we've been organizing peer-to-peer residential workshops. This one was, it's called Laboratorio Nordico, and it's funded by the main Nordic funds. We were 12 translators from Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish, and the three relevant national funds gave us the possibility to meet there for a week, and each of us had a sample translation to be discussed with the others, peer to peer. It's really worthwhile, and you really learn a lot by exchanging views, also on the text with your colleagues. but you cannot do that without funds. Again, sample translation grants. I didn't know what picture to choose, so this is a wall painting that I found in Ljubljana last spring. I was there attending the latest Seattle AGM, the annual general meeting, and well, it might look like a translator thinking. Sustainable scouting activity. When scouting takes a lot of time, a lot of important skills. You really need to know not only one book market, but two. Find the good books, find the good places for these good books, and so on and so forth. You need to read a lot, prepare a sample, prepare a reader's report, and it takes a lot of time and energy, and it's very usually something that you don't get paid for, which is not so good. Some foreign funds do have a sample translation grant. The Danish did have one, but they just closed it. Well, they closed it to translators, which is yeah, a pity. But yeah. So this is also something important to be able to give yourself some time to work on a good book proposal. Acknowledgement. As I told you before, visibility is not a goal in itself. It means respect. This is a picture that I took nearly 1 year ago. The 23rd of April is the World Book Day, and Seattle has been participating in a campaign launched by the European Writers' Council called Behind Every Book. And it's an author, writers, translators, illustrators campaign where you take a picture of yourself behind the book and then beside the book or whatever, visible and not visible. And I think it says a lot about well, who make the books, who creates them, who thinks, where the book starts. And I think it all starts with a creative process that can be the writers or the translators. But yeah, you really have to acknowledge it and also to treat it fairly. How will we achieve it? Well, my bet is through networking. So I really warmly advise you to support your association back home. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Eva. And thank you, Julia. I apologize because I didn't read Julia biography. I will. It's really short. I take the occasion to do it now. I'm sorry. It's a long day. Julia Stavl. Sorry for my pronunciation. I have to come to Ljubljana more often. Is a translator from Finnish, Estonian, and English. She translates prose, poetry, children's books, and drama. She has translated almost 50 works so far. In recent years, especially children's literature, from Estonian and Finnish into Slovenian. In 2010, she received the Radojka Krančić Award for the best young Slovenian literary translator. She taught Finnish at the University of Ljubljana between 2009 and 2014. She has been on the management board of the Slovenian Association of Literary Translators since 2014. They hosted a splendid AGM in Ljubljana, I must say, last May. And in 2020, she was nominated for the annual Cultural Endowment of Estonian Award for Best Translator from Estonian into foreign languages for 4 children books, translation into Slovenian. So thank you, Julia, again. Now I would like to give the word to Ruth. Thank you for being here. Ruth Ahmedzai Kemp is a literary translator working into English from Arabic, Russian, and German. She won an EB Honor List Award in 2022 for her translation of The Raven's Children by Yulia Yakovleva. Her work has been also shortlisted for the Helen and Kurt Wolf Translators Prize, the Saif Gobash Banipal Prize, and the GRI Translated YA Prize. She has several times been awarded a PEN Translate grant for her translations, which include fiction and non-fiction from Germany, Jordan, Morocco, Palestine, Russia, Switzerland, and Syria. Ruth is a project manager at World Kid Lit, writes about global children's publishing at Words Without Borders, and is founding director of Azulejos Agency, a new boutique literary agency specializing in children's and YA writing in translation into English. I would like you to tell us about your work and about World Kid Lit. I'm a fan of World Kid Lit. I read it. It's a really great resource for translators all over the world, and about the Azulejos project.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. I'm sorry I don't have slides, and I might dart about from different subjects. You'll get a sense of how my working career is quite busy and trying to cover lots of topics, but it's all about diversity for me, and expanding the range of what is published, what children have access to, and the conversations that happen in families and in schools and in libraries. First, I'd love to start by saying thank you to the Bologna Book Fair for this exhibition, which I just found on the way here, which is Drawings for Palestine, and that's in this room, in this hall A30. I believe it came about due to the intervention of a couple of artists, including Andrea Antonori, who was, won the Bologna Children's Illustration Prize last year, I think. And there was some criticism of Bologna Book Fair and an open letter to the fair about the relative silence about the Israeli aggression in Gaza, considering the statement that was made 2 years ago in condemnation of Russia's attacks in Ukraine. And I'd just like to say thank you to Bologna Book Fair for responding, if not in a direct statement addressing that imbalance of let's say, of coverage or attention. But by responding by giving a space for artists, and that's those artworks are for sale, and there's a collection for the UN, UNRWA, and I think that's particularly important given Bologna Book Fair's connection with UN and stance supporting children's rights and the rights of children everywhere. But why do I start with this? Well, not just because this is politically important right now, but because it is, like I say, absolutely at the heart of my work. I translate from 3 languages, and they all have a very different context, very different financial context. I could translate from German every day of my career because Germany, Switzerland, and Austria all put good money into funding literary translation. Not so much for children's books, unfortunately, but there is enough work. I could translate German every day, but it's important to me to support diversity in our publishing landscape in the UK, but also that is, of course, interlinked with publishing in the US, in India, in other English publishing landscapes. And so through World Kid Lit and through my work as a book scout and now as an agent, I'm always looking for ways to connect Arabic publishers with publishers in the US to do samples and represent books written in Arabic, and particularly I've worked with Palestinian authors, but also Syrian. And we see so many obstacles to that kind of work, which unfortunately I think do come down to a degree of racism, structural racism within publishing and education, fear of the unknown, and a relative lack of imagination about making those connections, finding readers, finding translators. As already said, in the UK and the US, the translation is a relatively small part of our publishing landscape, 3 or 4%, and of course there's masses of competition, and money has the biggest voice. You know, the most books are published, of course, from countries which put the biggest funding behind promoting their literature, and there are huge swathes of the publishing world which really struggle to get noticed and to be represented in translation. So I suppose I see my role as speaking up for a lot of Asia, a lot of Africa, a lot of Eastern Europe, but particularly starting with the Middle East and with Arabic authors. And I just also wanted to say that this sort of political context and fear does also affect what is published, even at a time when we need more publishing from more books that promote empathy and tolerance and knowledge of other cultures, other religions. Funding is pulled for books. So, for example, I was working on a bilingual book about a deaf character by a Syrian author, and that was about to come out in English and Arabic. And even though there's no connection with Israel-Palestine situation, there was fear around publishing that, and some of the funding for the printing was pulled, which seems absurd at a time when we need more books about disability and every kind of diversity, especially from authors from outside of the UK or mainstream publishing world. So, in the face of, as we've already discussed, very little funding, very little institutional support, how do I go about trying to get more books published in translation from Arabic and other less translated languages? By the way, just to give some statistics, I'm sorry I don't have a lovely slide, but just to give an idea of the sort of scale. I mean, I do talk about Arabic a lot. It's not. It's one of 3 languages I translate from, but I give a lot more energy to it at the moment. We at World Kid Lit, so this is a community volunteer project, which I'll explain a little bit more about in a second. But one thing we do is research into what has been translated in terms of children's books, books for junior readers, teenage YA readers, and also graphic novels. And we draw on other research done by other charities like Outside in World. In the US, there's the Children's Cooperative Book Center, so various other research projects. But mainly because we, as a hub of experts in children's publishing and libraries, we want to show that there is a lot more translated than people realize, because translators are not on the cover, the language is not always mentioned, publishers don't always draw attention to the fact that books are translated, whereas we see that as an aspect of diversity and an aspect to be celebrated in itself. So firstly, we want to show that there's a lot more translated than you would think, and that is an aspect of interest, I think, to children, whether they have another language or not, or interested in seeing other aspects of the world. But so from those statistics, we've seen that in the last 6 years since we've been looking, there's been about 17 translations from Arabic, which, when you consider that Arabic is a language spoken and written, published in over 26 countries, it's one of the 5th biggest languages in the world. But there's been just 1 book from Egypt, 3 from Jordan, 2 from Lebanon. So it's really small figures. And that figure of 17 sort of is quite similar to translations from Korean. It's about 14. And we're aware that there are more books. We haven't got all of the data, but we're adding to it all the time. But this is a representative sort of sample. From Finnish, there's been 17. And so you talk about Finnish as a small language, but it hits above its weight in terms of funding, promoting excellent literature that then gets translated. It's been brilliant to see an increase in publishing from Ukraine. So it's been 16 translations in the last 6 years, 19 from Polish, 13 from Hebrew. And this is all fantastic, but these are the languages of one relatively small country, whereas with Arabic, that's a similar number, and that's, there's thousands of really good writers that are not but getting seen, and brilliant illustrators. Shall I say a little bit more about World Kid Lit and what we do to sort of try to increase diversity and more exchange of children's books from beyond, let's say, mainstream or Western, better funded Western Europe. So World Kid Lit is in the process of becoming a charity where we will apply for funding to support our work. But for the last 6 years, it's been a project entirely run by volunteers, and we are a hub or a network of experts in the publishing side, so translators, editors, publishers, and then also librarians and teachers. And we make a point of bringing together those different aspects of the children's publishing scene, because there's this sort of a self-interested motivation for translators to be involved and to talk about their expertise, and that benefits teachers. And then there's a benefit to publishers to see that there is an interest and a demand for world literature, for translation in schools. So although there's been other projects that have worked more on the publishing side or more on diversity in education, we, I think, are sort of new in bringing together this expertise in this way. And we've got, we have a blog, we post interviews and book reviews and articles about world literature every week throughout the year. And then in September, we promote World Kid Lit Month on social media, but also in real life sometimes, in schools and libraries and bookshops, as a way of shining a spotlight on what is translated, what books you might read that were written in another country, which authors have other language heritages, other that aren't necessarily known about. So it's world literature in a really wide sense. But then we'd sort of provide a service to publishers also in terms of recommending book readers, because as you were talking about, book scouts and sort of behind the scenes services for publishers is a really important part of enabling publishers to take a risk on something when it's a market they don't know. And often publishers are so overwhelmed and busy, they don't have time. They might like the sound of this book that was written in Finnish or written in Urdu, but how do they go about finding somebody to tell them about it? And often that is just too big an obstacle to overcome. So we have a network of World Kid Lit ambassadors who to try to sort of expand that knowledge and make it easier to find out about funding and books that and samples that have been translated. So we one of the regular features that we do in the run up to this book fair and Frankfurt is a Seeking a Publisher series, which is translators sharing their proposals or pitches of books that they would like to publish. And so this is a route in for translators to sort of have a platform to share what they're interested in. And then the other project that you mentioned, Azulejos, is really coming out of this awareness that there are lots of translators who've done a sample of a book that really deserves to find a publisher, but little awareness of how publishing works, and that in itself is a massive obstacle. A translator might fall in love with a book, but it can take years to make some contacts, to find out how to pitch, and that book, it should be out there in the world. And so I'm keen to work with more translators and with other literary agencies to make those connections, make the most of the contacts that I've got through my translation work, and to help some other books, including, so I've got some manuscripts on my desk of wonderful Arabic, Egyptian and Palestinian novels, which super keen translators translated years ago and haven't been able to do anything with, so I want to champion those books. So if anyone does want to come and talk to me about Azulejos afterwards, I'm really happy to make those connections and think creatively about how to fund and make books happen in a context that makes it really difficult. Thank you.
Do you travel a lot? Do you travel a lot for just okay, book fairs? Okay, thank you very much, Julia. That's a really interesting work, and it's true that sometimes it takes a lot of time to have our let's say, findings published. I had the chance to have a book that was suggested to me during a workshop, a translation workshop in Switzerland in 2015, and finally, after many emails, many contacts, and a lot of work, finally it was published this year, and I was so happy about it. But it took like 6 years. I mean, you have to be also very patient, huh? To keep up and try and maybe it's not the right moment, but then you try again and maybe it will. Okay. Now I would like to give the word to Elisabetta. Sorry about this. Elisabetta Lipolis, thank you for being here. Graduated in translation from the University of Trieste, where she was a contract professor and specialized in children's literature at the University of Padua. She was responsible for many years for the management of a training program and institutional events of an international research center, which included master classes on science communication and educational projects promoted with collaborating research institutes to foster international cooperation. A trainer for the Italian Born to Read program, Nati per Leggere, she is currently involved in projects on parenting support, intercultural dialogue, multilingualism, and reading education in schools and care settings. Teaching seminars at the Pediatric Nursing Master Program at the University of Trieste, and promoting the use of multilingual picture books and wordless books, also with adults in situation of fragility. She is vice president of the Italian section of IBI, International Board on Books for Young People, a member of its editorial board of the team and also a member of the team of the Mamma Lingua project, supporting linguistic diversity and multilingualism. So this is right. We are really. We want to know. Could you talk about IBI, of course, and about your precious work as a trainer in reading programs supporting linguistic diversity and multilingualism, such as Mamma Mia? Because I read it and I was really amazed about it. It was really incredible. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, to Francesca and Eva for having me here. I got very emotional when they invited me, and especially today when Francesca addressed me as a translator, because I just realized, and I told her that I have remained a translator, although this has not been my first activity in the end. But then I think that if you become a translator, probably diversity is already in your heart. And after training as a translator, even if you don't pursue translation as a main activity, diversity remains, the leading part of your life. So the introduction that Francesca did on my activities is not just to, I was a bit embarrassed. It was a long series of things, but it's not because it is an accumulation of activities. It's rather what Ruth was sharing. Diversity also in our own lives. So if I'm sharing about myself, because this was the invitation from Francesca and Eva to share, is just to give ideas, an example of what translation really can lead to and why we need translators. I would say, first of all, that everything started from translation. So Francesca said I graduated from the interpreter school in Trieste, and we share this. So you will see also in the translation leads to amazing networks that even after 40 years come up, and you find out that you have pursuing the same, objectives in different ways. No, isn't it, Ruth? I think this is happening to you as well. Diversity and mediation, which is a word that Eva mentioned, are the key words. There are many key words. So the projects I am involved in, and I have been involved in, have constant words. One is dialogue. Dialogue and mediation, facilitation, I would also add. So having a background in translation makes you become a mediator, a facilitator of dialogue, and leads you to necessarily to respect. This is another word, because if you get to know other cultures, other languages, respect is there. Otherwise, you don't have the interest. Another word is perhaps dignity. So regardless of the number of speakers in a language, of the number of books, each language has the same dignity. And the same, all cultures have the same dignity. So you don't need to teach people, to tell people about this, if you have books at hand. So the Mama Lingua project, for example. If you have a project that has at its disposal a suitcase of books in 46 different languages, regardless, again, of the number of speakers. And you have books in each language. And you also have the same book in all languages. The messages that you are conveying is exactly that. They are all equally important. And this is only possible if you have translators. So we don't need to explain that further. And we need exactly the job and the work that Julia is doing, and Eva is doing, digging out and giving dignity to even minority, if you want to, I don't like the word, but minor number languages and cultures. So the Mama Lingua project, for example, as Francesca asked me to share, is a project started at a very local level in Lombardia. Because librarians realized that they had many families who were not mother tongue Italian, and they didn't have access to books in their own mother tongue. And this was hampering the growth of the children in the family in the mother tongue language, because mothers, mother tongue, speak that language. This is in the language in which they sing lullabies, in which they scold children, in which they express, they give name to the food, they give name to a certain, the way you wear, and so on and so forth. Everything that you know as translators. So you need your mother tongue. But when they would access libraries, books were not there. They were not only in Italian. So the message conveyed was immediate. Unless you learn Italian, you don't have the right to express yourself. And if it is Italian, you'll never be able to really convey what you can only find in your own language. So this is how the project started. Trying to find books in the main languages, let's say the languages of the families that were accessing the libraries. But then that got farther, because it became the second step was realizing that that was helping the Italian mother tongue families and children to get to know other cultures. So it would be a powerful tool of intercultural dialogue and conveying what I said before, mutual respect without having to teach people anything, because the message is there, and it is there in a public space, a public library. This is very important. And it would become an instrument to teachers to understand that, to access that, and realize exactly the same message. So the program, I'll make a big story, long story short, because you can find the whole of this information online on the Mamma Lingua project web pages, and also the EB Italia website, because along the story, along the path, EB Italia adopted the project. Okay, so we are supporting this project. It's among the projects of EB Italy. It got, for example, in this way, it could get financing from the Yamada Fund, which is a fund supporting exactly what you were saying, Ruth. So you see, we work in different environments, in different places, but the objectives are exactly the same. This is what I was saying before. We end up by really supporting the same things. It got also the financing from the Italian Center for Books and Reading of the Ministry of Culture. So see how far it got. And it is supported by the Italian Association of Libraries. So now it is a true national project. And not only that, because being an EB Italy project, now it will be, for example, hosted at our International World Congress. You have received this. There will be EB World Congress in Italy, in Trieste, in 2024. And a space will be there to talk about multilingualism, intercultural dialogue, translation. And Mamma Lingua project will be there because already a seminar, an international seminar, was organized in Milan a couple of years ago, and it involved colleagues from the other EB sections in the world, and it aims at expanding even more. So it will be a house for other initiatives. This is just an example, just to tell you about a project. Another project is the World Congress. So EB is the International Board on Books for Young People. It has 84 national sections in the world, pursuing exactly the right of every child to access good books, thanks to translators as well, and fostering international and mutual dialogue. Every second year, the World Congress is hosted by a different national section. It will be Italy, Trieste in 2024, and space will be there for translation. Eva, she is in our scientific committee, and she's being really so important, so crucial in also, for example, the evaluation of all the papers that we received under the call. And I think having a translator in our committee, scientific committee, was so important, because it was not having to evaluate translation, but giving exactly this kind of perspective of opening in a multi-professional team that included pediatricians, librarians, booksellers, academics. So making other people know that each one in her own profession of volunteering work is really putting a small piece to a big puzzle, a big image, a big, a bigger effort. In the Congress, Eva will lead us and will help us with roundtables, with the workshops for young readers. You will be involved. We have received also papers from translators. There will be oral sessions. and poster sessions. So we couldn't miss that. And just to tell you, we decided to put translation in this overall theme of frontiers, just to give it that wide perspective, not the technicalities, but what a translator and more a scout does, and the role is. Now, Mamma Lingua IB dialogue, there is a dialogue there, and it is from the big scene to the small projects. So I want to give you another example of where translation is crucial. Trieste. Well, you know, Trieste is a territory that is so rich in cultures, languages, history, and the possibility to have, as I said, books translated from other languages and the same book in different languages is allowing us to do what we would never be able to do otherwise, because it would have a strong political, in the negative sense, this is what you, Ruth, wanted also to say before, meaning you could have probably get hampered a bit, you know, in trying to convey the message of dialogue, while books, and starting from young children, allowed to convey the same message in the appropriate way. For example, I have here my friend and colleague Ivana Soban. She is responsible for the children's section of the Slovenian National Library. And I am responsible for a small library of an association, so it's part of my volunteer work, called Senza Confini, No Borders, which is part of the network of libraries of the Trieste municipality. Tosi has got a official public hat on it. Well, this allows me and Ivana to work together, and I go to visit Ivana, and we have bilingual reading under the Mamma Lingua project. Ivana is going to our association, for example, with Marco Kravos, a well-known author in Trieste, who's writing in the two languages, and we present the books. And this is under the Mamma Lingua project, and this is under the municipality of Trieste, and this gets connected to IBI, to the Congress, and to everything else. So we need to organize something with translators about this. This allowed many communities from Trieste to feel welcomed. Also traditional communities, historical communities, because, you know, if you have a territory which is rich in cultures, it doesn't mean these groups dialogue, especially if, again, the word minority is there, because you want also, quite rightly, to preserve your own culture. But in this way, they can find places whereby they feel welcomed. So, for example, now we have a very strong relationship with the Romanian community, the Senegalese community, the Iranian community in Trieste, starting from the books, because they realized that their own books from their own childhood had been translated in other languages. And I want to just finish with one short story, which I think can be convey a strong meaning. We are also hosting schools, classes in the association in Trieste. And especially schools which are, a bit outside the city center, and which tend to be, as always happens, very often happens, multicultural. And so in the last visit we had from a middle school, I still say middle school, okay, children, books were there, but we were discussing other issues. So at a certain point I said, well, if I say the word book, what do you say? Faces were like, no, books, no. But we had graphic novels there. And intentionally graphic novels and also books translated from other countries, the countries that, of course, were the countries of their families, originally where the families were coming from, and they realized that books could be something interesting. But the most striking comment was from one of the children, and this boy said, but this is a book by, in this case it was a Serbian author. By a Serbian author, yes, but it is in Italian. Yes. And he said, no, I thought books written by Serbian authors in Serbian would be in Serbia. And I said, exactly. So we realized the children didn't know that books were translated. So books were taken to the school, and when they were back, 3 children said, I think I want to become a translator. And this is the message. I encourage them. I'm sorry. But I think this is just, so you'll have more work to do.
No, thank you very much. Thank you. I think we have to learn a lot from children. I remember years ago in a festival in Trani, Dialoghi di Trani, I gave a kind of reading workshop to children to explain that there is someone who translates from one language. It's not very easy to explain, but it was very interesting. And then we worked on the text together, on names, on puns, things like that. And they had incredible ideas, of course. I learned a lot from them. And it was really interesting because, as you said, they thought, well, this is the author, is in that language. They didn't have the notion of translating yet, of course, not yet. Thank you very much. If you have questions, or if you want to add something, or to the debate, or to the round table, here's the microphone. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alexis, and I'm a beginning literary translator from Dutch to English, and I was just wondering if you had any advice on how to get yourself out there. How to get yourself out there at the fair and make contacts, because it's not working so well so far.
Hello. Well, you made the best choice so far by choosing Dutch, because it's one of the best funded languages for literary translation, and really hits above its weight in terms of books that are published. Like, a lot come from Dutch, but of course you're also in competition with very established translators, and so breaking into that market is hard. But I would recommend by going to the quieter parts of the fair. So there's the World Lounge. Of course, everybody has a busy schedule of appointments, but if you smile, you might catch somebody who's having a break and doesn't have an appointment. And there are some English language publishers there. So it's worth just seizing every opportunity to say hi, tell what you do. But yeah, when you work from a language where there is already good funding and good knowledge of agents and of the institutions behind disseminating literature, then you have got that advantage. But yeah, use serendipity and just talk to everybody you can. But then also don't be afraid to write to editors. So use World Kidlit as a resource. We have lots of interviews with commissioning editors at English language publishing houses, explaining what they choose when they're looking for books to translate, what sort of obstacles they have to overcome, what they want to know from translators. And also we have quite a long list of all the publishers that we've ever featured in one way or another on the website. And so there's ways that you can use World Kidlit to find the publishers' websites. And then a surprising number of publishers do have their contact details there. So don't be afraid to write to them, and then write again in 6 months and say, not to pester, but to just offer your expertise. Perhaps they haven't seen that there was a prize announcement. So like the latest German youth literature prize. Just little snippets of information every now and again can just sort of show them that you know what you're talking about, you know the market, and just eventually know your name. Good luck.
Other question? Opa. Roberta? Still have a few minutes if you have other curiosity, or just don't be scared. Otherwise,
Ecco, una domanda, cioè se voi avete da consigliare i siti web più interessanti per la gente che vorrebbe sapere di più in generale, cioè di recente c'è stato un articolo bellissimo che ha fatto un elenco delle 40 siti più importanti per
for children literature or for
io pensavo per i bambini, sì.
to have a kind of list.
Oh, sorry, wrong
Websites.
language.
Well, World
I'm
Kid
sorry,
Lit.
oh.
World Kid Lit.
I'm sorry, I was thinking in both languages. My question was if there are certain websites that people who are interested in international children's literature can go to, like the top 10 or the top 5. And if also, especially if that list is made available online, that would be great. That could be updated.
I'll pass it back to others, but apart from World Kid Lit, I'd also like to give a shout out to the GLLI, that's the Global Literature in Libraries Initiative. And Katie from GLLI is here and has some leaflets if anyone would like to have details of the prize which they run for translated YA, so teen YA novels, older readers. Novels which have been translated from other languages into English. But they also have had funding to make a really fantastic website which links to many, many other websites. So World Kid Lit does that too, links to lots of other sites, but this is from a US perspective and from the perspective of librarians. So that's, I think, going to be launched, I think it's being launched this week at Bologna. Is it, Katie? Do you want to say any more about it? Sorry, it's a website between the ALA, the American Librarians Association, and GLLI.
I think what it is they were given a grant through the American Library Association, through the Rutgers. Rutgers has a international youth literature collection, and so on April 2nd, they announced this global Kidlit thing. But I think it's being launched in June at the ALA conference, so it might not be there yet, but if you look up the Rutgers International Youth Collection, that website will have more details.
Well, also the website of EB International. You really, from there, you land to 84 national sections. So you have the main website, you have honor lists there, and you have a lot of links to start from, and also to the individual national sections, and another world opens there. Okay, it's like leading to the Italian section, as I said. You land to the Mamma Lingua, from the Mamma Lingua you land to the Centro Salute del Bambino, to the Association of Librarians, and on and on and on. And you get more list of books, contacts, projects. So there's really a lot.
Sorry, I talk too much. But also, I'd really love to highlight a fantastic IBI project, which is the international selection of books for young people with disabilities. The books are not only for children with disabilities, but there are 3 themes. So books featuring disabilities, books for children with disabilities, so books in Braille and tactile and other forms of books. and then books about disability. So really fantastic resource also for translators, because those have been selected by national committees, have won prizes, or you may be eligible for funding, and so many of them haven't been picked up yet for translation, but it's a really great resource.
Okay, so if you don't have other questions, I really would like to thank again Elisabetta, Eva, Julia, Ruth. Carolina was supposed to be there. I suppose she has a problem or something, but and thank you for being here and hearing us. It was really interesting. Thank you very much.